Good morning, everybody. Good morning, everybody else. Good. All right. Get a little participation here. Thank you for coming out. It's wonderful to see all your faces. I know a lot of you are from right here, and then we have guests from here, there, and everywhere. But welcome, everybody. And I wanted to just give a few announcements before Dave and Kim get started. First of all, Freedom Coalition is set up in the lobby. We are doing all that we can locally and to turn things around in our country. It has to start locally. Everybody's hoping some magician will come and pull a rabbit out of a hat in Washington, D.C., but we need to turn things around locally because that's where we originally lost things. So get involved in the Freedom Co. There's information in the lobby, and we're trying to get a Freedom Co. started in every county in California. And so I wanted you to know about that. Also on that table, there is a ballot to repeal the death tax. I just wish we could repeal all of the taxes. But anyway, let's start with the death tax. That's got to be one of the most evil things. And then years ago, we started producing these and handing them out. We've handed thousands of them out. They're available at the table back there. But listen, this is a simple statement. As free Americans, how many are still at least entertain the dream of being a free American? Right? As free Americans, we will not comply. Say it together. It feels good. We will not comply with unconstitutional medical or political mandates that violate our basic rights. You know the scary thing? Most businesses in town were afraid to put this up. One lady said, "I know who you are and what you're doing." I said, "Well, what I'm doing is trying to keep your business open." She said, "I'd rather my business be closed than take anything from you." I said, "Have it your way." Guess what? It's an empty building. It's for lease down on the corner here. But anyway, if you don't have one of these, get one of these, put it up somewhere. And I just started, it was a column years ago, but now it's a blog called Time to Roar. But listen, people who entertain righteous values and principles have been way too quiet for way too long. And so let's learn to roar. I wish I had my little video of Cheryl herding lions. She just got back from South Africa where she made a video getting these big male lions. She had a little stick herding them down the road. But anyway, listen, we need to learn to roar. We need to be loud. We need to stand for truth. I want us to all stand up and welcome to the stage David and Kim Martin. More than anybody I know in the world, David Martin knows how to roar. Let's welcome David and Kim Martin.
Which one do you want? Mm-hmm. All right. Kim and I are so deeply grateful to be here. When we put this little spot on the calendar a little while ago, we weren't supposed to be here. We were supposed to be celebrating Dave's birthday next week. And Dave has this terrible habit of kind of doing what I call mission creep. You know, it starts out as, we'll get together for your birthday, and then, well, if you're already most of the way across the country, you know, and then it turns into the next thing and the next thing and the next thing. And so Kim and I just got back from the United Kingdom a couple days ago and had the opportunity to swap out our bags. And Kim was packing a very large bag.
We're not surprised.
And she looked at me and she goes, "We're really going again for 9 days?" And I had to remind her that this is her idea. And before we get started, I just wanted to make a couple observations. This is Kim's 5th anniversary living in America this weekend. And I can confidently say that she got out of Australia exactly at the right time, because Lord knows, if we had stayed there, we would have been in a heap of trouble. We were down in Melbourne, in Victoria, and you can imagine how much popularity we'd have in Victoria, Australia, if we had done any of the things we're doing. So there's that. But I do want all of you to know that there's no better place to celebrate her 5th anniversary than right here. There you go.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
You know, it's funny. I can't imagine a person who embodies the spirit of the American dream as much as Kim. Whether it's shooting with Alan at a tactical range 1 year ago, whether it is standing up for the rights of citizens in this country and all around the world, there is nobody whose heart beats more pure liberty than Kim Martin. And so it feels like it's an appropriate time to be here. And it's an appropriate time for us to do something that is also a first, which is this is the first time Kim Martin has shared an all-day stage with me.
No easy task, but it will be.
and
I might get one word in.
And the reason, yeah, listen to that. The reason why we're doing this is because we love you guys.
Yeah.
This was Kim's idea. This was not my idea. Kim and Cheryl have a bad habit of sending each other way too many messages. And in one of those messages, we became aware that it would be really beautiful if we could give a gift back to this community. And for those of you who don't know, that's tall order for me. If you would have gone back 4 years ago this year, so 4 years ago, and we're right on the anniversary of the madness, remember? This is when patient 1 allegedly happened. 4 years ago, if you would have said, I would be doing a fundraiser for a church, I would have gone, that'd be as dumb as people taking an experimental gene therapy. And certainly nobody would be dumb enough to think that. So here I am. And the real reason I'm saying this is we're going to have fun today. If you want serious, you came to the wrong place.
I don't do serious.
We're going to have fun. The goal of this is to be able to poke fun at ourselves a little bit. Why 4 years ago I wouldn't be in this place is because I just didn't have a good experience with what people call religion. And I have a whole lot of reasons why that are really not material. It's just I knew I didn't need to be in that environment anymore. And Dave decided that he felt I was wrong.
Asking 3 times,
he
badgered the witness.
conscripted Kim into that nonsense, and here we are. But really, each one of you is really the reason why I'm getting to this punchline. You're here, obviously, because of the amazing fellowship that we've built over the last several years, and we're grateful to each and every one of you. If nothing else, I wanted to be able to publicly say thank you to each one of you for the fact that standing together, we have actually built a community around the world that is more powerful than all of the forces that darkness has been able to put together. And I'm just going to tell you, it'll be this event and it'll be every other event for the rest of time where we sit together. The light we have is so powerful that no amount of darkness can even begin to touch it. So we're gonna do what we can today to talk through the places where, as light, we can do a better job as light. That's what we're gonna do. We're gonna do a better job as light. But the first thing we have to do is realize that the currency of the future is going to be gratitude. That's what it's going to be. And the currency of the future as gratitude first needs to flow from us to each one of you. You're here in part for nothing more than we're going to be on stage, we're going to do the thing. And yes, already, if you need to ask the question, you're in the wrong audience. If you need a selfie, if you need a hug, if you need a whatever else, one of the two of us can make that happen. Number one. Number two, we're grateful that you decided to help support what's going on here at the Church of Glad Tidings. We are super, super grateful. If you're watching this online, if you're here today, we are grateful that you're part of an amazing outreach that is actually making a difference to human beings who are in pain and hurting, because this is the model of what we have to do going forward. And the reason why we are actually delighted to do this fundraiser today is because we want to see a whole lot more of this. So every seed that every one of you guys planted by coming here, every seed that every one of you planted online to be a part of this event, that is going to actually building the model of what is to come. And we're not waiting for a heaven on earth. We're actually creating a heaven on earth.
Yay!
And so thank you. Before we're even started, we're done. Thank you for actually doing what you did, because what you're doing is actually going to make a difference for humanity. This is a model that we can point to, and we can actually say, hey, there's a place that's doing it right, and it's over here. And the more we do that, the better. So, blame Kim for this. Blame Dave for coercing her into this.
I don't need much coercing.
And we're going to go ahead and roll a tape.
Our eyes bear witness to the grotesque spectacle coughed forth from the darkest corner of Xerxes' empire. Our eyes bear witness.
Love that. Love that.
We've been asked many times, are we afraid of the they? There's a they out there. They that did this, they that did that, the theys. And I like to point to that video. And I like to actually remind people, as I said on my interview with Seth Holthouse, the rhino's already dead. The rhino's already dead. The thing that actually is the thing that we are supposed to fear, we are supposed to be intimidated by, we are supposed to live in constant terror of, that thing is already dead. And as a result of that, what we all need to do is do something just for fun right now, which is, let's get the Spartan pose, right? Now, before you do it, I'm going to show it to you. You'll notice that the left leg has to be forward. Now, why? Why? This is important. Left leg has to be forward. And the reason why left leg has to be forward is in Egyptian cosmology, and by the way, you see this on every statue you've ever seen in Egypt, the left leg forward means you're entering into the afterlife with a pure heart. You're presenting your heart before God. And you're actually saying, I have the audacity of saying, I've lived well. So when you walk into the afterlife, we walk in with that final judgment, your left leg goes forward. You know why the Spartan put his left leg forward? Because he knew that no matter what, he was going to throw that spear was going to hit its target because he's a Spartan. He knows it's going to hit the target. Kind of like when I get in front of the UK Parliament. I'm not wondering if I'm going to actually land a speech. I'm going to land a speech. You throw the spear, it hits the target, and the thing keeps running towards you. But guess what? Why is your left foot forward? You're sending a message in this life, I'm not moving. My heart is pure, I'm not moving. And if the rhino gets you, if the rhino comes in and gores you, you know what? The last thing this earth is going to see is your message that says, I am confidently going to my Maker, knowing that my heart was pure. So I want you to actually get up and actually take your left foot and just put it forward. And if you need to throw your imaginary spear, and on the count of 3, we're going to say, the rhino is dead. 1, 2, 3. The rhino is dead. There you go. Feels like a little Sparta. You can never get enough of little Sparta, right? Yeah. All right, let's go. All right, now.
Brilliant.
Now we're gonna have some fun today, and we got a complex graphic, and if we had a giant screen behind us, you could actually read it. But we'll go ahead and hop to the next slide. And since it's not a giant screen behind us, I'm going to walk you through it so that you know what you're looking at. But this is going to be the framework of how we're going to walk through this morning. And we got 2 things happening today. We've got the morning's presentation where we're going to walk through a little bit of the state of the world. And then this afternoon, we're going to open up the floor. We're going to have some conversation about what we can do to do a better job making this world a more beautiful, wonderful place. And so that's kind of be the framework. Now, you'll notice that this is kind of a bizarre tree. And on the tree, we have a bunch of little colorful branches. And then in the background, we have a matrix. And the reason why we have this graphic is to talk about the 3 phases that we're living in right now. The inside phase is the stories that we have built our present on. The stories we've built our present on. We need to understand that as human beings, we have this bad habit of telling stories and then seeing the world through the lens of the story we tell. And it may not even be a good story or bad story or anything else. Our brains are wired to think in patterns, and the patterns that we have are patterns from stories that we were told or that we tell, and those stories, whether they're right or wrong, frame the way in which we encounter the world. Okay? So we're going to unpack that first little set of tree limbs. We're going to go through those and say, what are the stories we've been telling? And we're going to do them chronologically. We're going to start at the very beginning, and we're going to work our way through the stories. The second little arc, the lighter colors, are going to be what we've done in terms of how we got to today, where we are today, how the stories got us to where we are today. Because we need to understand the state of the world is not someone else's fault. The state of the world is because we, as participants, are engaged in a world that said, this is how we're going to decide to live. And whether we like it or not, I want you to hear one thing very clearly. The system of the world is working perfectly well according to its design right now. This is exactly how this system was designed. So when people say, well, I don't think the world's working out so well, it's working perfect based on the design that was put in place. Now, we can actually sit and judge the design all we want, but it is actually technically incorrect to say it's not working. Like a machine is designed to do a thing, if the machine that's designed to do a thing is doing the thing it was designed to do, the machine is working. Now, we might not like it, we might not like the product that comes out of it, all those things may be true, but it is foolish to say it's not working because it is. And in fact, it's working very well, extremely well. So our job in this second loop of what we're going to have in our conversation is going to be to say, hold on a second, there's a machine and it's working really well, and rather than judging its output, let's examine the engineering of that machine to see if we can find out how we could do an engineering that would work better. Because the last place we're going to go is what would better look like. I can tell you the number of lazy people I've met in the last 3.5 years is too numerous to count. There's a ton of people who are pretty sure that I'm going to just be a hero, and somewhere inside the cape I've got the magic button, and one day I'll hit the button and Bill Gates will be arrested, Anthony Fauci will accidentally step in front of a bus, Ralph Barrick will drink some of his own Kool-Aid and, Lord knows, mutate into the monkey or the bat or the pangolin he wants to be. Who knows? I don't have that button. I don't. But what I do have, and what's already working, is I have the ability to know that I, apparently, according to all of them, am one of the most dangerous people on earth.
And
now, it's funny. It's funny to be that. I still put my pants on one leg at a time. I still am bald. Nothing, no genetically modified anything. No magic hairs come out. I don't have the superhero thing, but what I do have is I have two things that they will never understand. I have the love of a woman in my life who has actually stood not behind me, supporting me, and sometimes not even beside me. Sometimes she just plows the traffic in front of me. The fact of the matter is I have somebody who actually I know every day I am encouraged to be the best version of myself. So she is actually a purifying love, not a Hallmark greeting card love. This is not all fluff and bubbles. I know it looks like it, but sometimes there can be a little bit of a thorn. But that's great. I have that, and they'll never have that. Klaus Schwab will never have somebody who actually is willing to call him to his highest manhood. He'll never have that. It's not possible, because that's not his world. And the other thing I have is I have the verifiable truth on my side.
Yep.
Not my opinion, not my hunch, not my speculation. I have the verifiable truth on my side. And the great thing is, 4 years into this nonsense and 23 years into me fighting this particular issue, I haven't had to issue a single retraction. You know why? Because it's never been my opinion. It's never been my thought. It's never been my statement. It has been a presentation of information that is necessary to inform the people of the world. That's all I've done. And the great news is I don't have to retract anything. I don't have to modify anything. I don't have to do any of those things because I actually haven't yet begun to fight. So we're going to end, before we go to lunch, with what we said was, how do we manifest the heaven on earth? What does it look like? What does that look like? And how do we break our model of heaven? How do we break our model of heaven so that we can see that heaven on earth is already manifesting? Not a somewhere out there. How do we actually start going, oh, hold on a minute. Maybe it is showing up. Maybe there are things showing up. And I'm going to make the audacious statement that says that today is a manifestation of that. 4 years ago, we were on a trajectory that said people were not going to sit together inside of a room in proximity. We were told we would, quote, Anthony Fauci, never hug again.
Not on our watch.
You want to have a little bit of fun for Anthony Fauci right now? Just get up and hug somebody right now.
Yeah.
Be a rebel and hug.
Love you.
There you go. You just broke his dream. You just broke his dream.
Love it. Love it.
All right. How does heaven feel? Yeah, there you go. There you go. How many of you would have traded that hug for a street paved in gold right now? Nah. You know what? A street paved in gold is a street. But
Shiny
a hug is actually life force.
Yeah.
You already just made heaven. And it was as simple as actually reaching out, wrapping your arms around another human being and saying, I'm here, you're here. Thank God we're here. Kim, before I get started,
Yes, Davo.
the last couple of years, what have you reached into in your own life to actually sustain you through the challenges of the last 3.5 years, where you've been in public in part of your choosing and in part because of what I've done? What have you done? What's your power? What's your superpower that has allowed you to actually thrive in the last 3.5 years?
Number one that just absolutely springs to mind is people. Like, my thing is absolutely people. Whether it's through my studying over the years and working in that kind of industry, nursing, human behaviour, what's possible. Like, my absolute thing is what's possible for humanity. Way before I met David, we both came in with, thank goodness, the same core values of that. And I absolutely thrive on friendships and community and gathering people together and having great conversations together and heartfelt, beautiful times together. So I love doing that. And I also love doing things that I love, so I fill up, so I can be my best for all of you, for my husband. Spending time with David is a huge thing for us. So yeah, being creative, as I said, I paint, the line that you saw, a lot of you know I did that, and I'm doing another painting, and I would love to explain that to you later on, a new one that I'm doing that goes with this one. It's its mate kind of thing. It's the feminine part of this, which this one was painted for David. So this was actually what I did do when I'm talking about creativity. I painted this lion. I didn't realise the effect it was going to have. I just trusted an impulse in me to go, okay, what do I need in all of this? Because you have to fill up as a human being as well. We all have to do things that matter to us so our cup is full so that it can overflow to help other people. So David was away. One of the times I couldn't join him, and I thought, I'm going to paint him a surprise.
That's David?
Sorry?
Is that David?
It's representative of, well, at the time I just wanted to paint him a picture. And this is what my inspiration was. And I painted it, and then I gave it to him. And then people were looking at it going, whoa, they're really affected by it, especially the eyes. And I didn't realise I was actually painting an essence of David. And if you look at the eye on the left, and if you spend enough time with David, you will see I've actually painted his eye. He has one that actually does that slight droop on one side. So it's kind of a bit, uncanny that actually happened. And then people are saying, well, we want it in T-shirts, we want it in all these things. And I thought, oh. So then it became, as many of you know, the Stand With Your Tribe thing. There's one in the church in there, and it's raised money for many things. It's just took on a life of its own. So that's what I did, and I might as well finish the part on what I'm doing at the moment, which is really just what I'm loving, what I'm doing more painting, and I'm my best self. Absolutely, when I'm painting, just ask David, he goes, man, it's so cool when you're painting because you're just so much more vibrant and fun and all that kind of stuff. So at the moment, and it's nearly finished, I had another inspiration to go, there's a mate for that. And it's not a lioness. I trusted what came through to me, and I kept seeing pictures of owls everywhere, so I've painted the owl coming through, which is representative, I realised, of the woman part. It's like this inspirational part of, it's time for us, man and a woman, to stand together and dance together and actually embrace and have all of our essences come together. It's not one or the other, and it's not this blame game of man and woman, blah, blah, blah. Like, come together in a beautiful energy. So there's the owls flying through a storm. So it's black and white behind the owl and all this lightning, and it's this powerful force of the owl. It's like helping the woman rise, and then there's the image of a woman coming out of the ocean in this huge, powerful burst forth from the ocean, which has been a challenge because I haven't painted anything like this before, but it's coming together, and then it's nearly finished. So in the middle, all I've got to do is add the colour to it, and there's going to be, I'm going to create some sort of effect where it's, of course, got sparkles and things. And there's an energy that you can see that is a combination of a man and a woman in this picture, just through energy, and that will sit next to this lion. And I've already had women look at it and go, literally had the eyes roll back in their head, and they're going, something just activated in me, like I feel stronger, like I feel like I want my voice. And so that's what I do. So I'm creative and do that, and I love doing that, and that helps me be in my best energy and frequency to do what we do together and being with other people and things like that. And I encourage everybody to do what lights them up, because you have to do that kind of thing so you feel fully on. You have to just fill up. So yeah, that's what I love doing, but I also have time to myself too, and some quiet time, because you need that, and meditation or whatever you do. So they're all the things that I have navigated and done over the last few years, and we also together have navigated in doing that our relationship and helping each other rise. David and I have refined each other. It's not a one-way street, and sometimes it's challenging, and it's not all picket fences and stuff, but if you dig deep and you actually say the hell yeah, this is what I want. We want to be a representative force on earth that is not seen a lot, of a man and a woman together, actually having a combined energy of power, because that's the fuel for everything. And that's why they're attacking that energy. Because they know it's a force that is unstoppable, and because it hasn't been tapped into, when it is, God help them. And that's what we want to inspire people to do, put time and effort into your relationship and things like that. So we've also been putting a ton of time into us. Yeah.
So I'm just going to, before we jump into what I'm going to do, I just thought maybe you guys could give Kim a little feedback. She asked if she should have cards or notes, because if she didn't have cards and notes, she wasn't sure that she was able to speak. How do you think she did without cards and notes?
Thank you.
I'm not worried now. I'm not worried. We got 5 hours to go, and I'm now not worried. I think she's going to have a voice. All right. So let's jump into that early part of the tree. Okay. So, and what I'm doing is I'm going to try to go in slow motion enough that we actually kind of sit and allow ourselves to think about the implications of what we're saying. And like I've tried to do in many times, I try to find words that help unlock some pretty big ideas so that we can actually think about the way we've seen the world and how the stories we tell are informing the way we live. And we're going to start, as I do in all of our integral accounting stuff, which is with matter and energy, the stuff of the universe, and the first story we have of the stuff of the universe, which we call creation. Unfortunately, if we actually take the time to read the 6 days of creation as represented to us in the Bible, very few of us spend any time pumping the brakes and going, did we really read that? Do we really understand what we just read? And that's a problem, because we all have the Sunday school version of it where we had the little, picture diagrams, and we had the little cartoons, and we had everything else. But the failure to read the actual presentation of the story as it is presented creates an illusion that has categorically no truth in it. None. Not some truth, none. Starting with the first day. The earth was without form and void, is what we were told. And God's Spirit moved over the darkness. But if we bothered to read the Hebrew, we'd find out that what it really said was the Spirit moved over the destruction. Well, that's a little bit of a mind bend, isn't it? Because a destruction implies that there was something before the beginning. Well, then what's a beginning? Now, I just bent a couple of your minds. Because we actually didn't use the word without form and void until the 1600s. See what happens when stories get told? We wanted to create a world that had a start and has a stop. And the reason why we need a world that has a start and a stop is because if you're going to create fear, you need to create scarcity. That includes a scarcity of time. There's a beginning, and then somebody hit a stopwatch, and the watch is tick, 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 and then tick, it's over. But even in the beginning, it's a reboot. It's a reboot. It's not a beginning, it's another go-round. Okay? Now, that's an interesting problem, isn't it? Because then we get into this mind field of, oh, well, blah, 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 what was before the before? You know what? The reason why there's not a story written about what was the before was because that wasn't that story. That story was intended to be read for what it tells us. But because we've told the story the broken way, we can't even get the wisdom of the story that's trying to be told. And I'll tell you a real live example of that problem. Day 2, the only day of creation that God did not say was good. And there's a little pause. No. My Sunday school teacher said God said every day was good. No, he didn't. On the second day of creation, he didn't say it was good. And God, by the way, in none of the 6 days said anything about good at all because the Hebrew didn't even have the word good in it. You've seen in movies or you've heard in celebrations the term Mazel Tov, T-O-V. And we have, in modern times, translated that into the throwaway, it's good. Mazel Tov, have a good time. That's great, whatever. But Tov, in the Hebrew, means fit for service. It's not a judgment. It's not a good or a bad. It's actually fit for service. And on day 1, the Spirit moved over to the darkness, and God said, let there be light, and there was light, and that was fit for service. Not good, fit for service. And then on the second day, he did this crazy thing, which nobody even has bothered to think about because it makes no sense. Separated the ethers, did the thing. But the problem is, the Hebrew doesn't have the term separate. We put that story in. And which, by the way, as of just today, I love this, it couldn't have happened any better than right now, just today, scientists have just found out that molecules are entangled with each other. Oh my gosh, stop the presses. You mean that the illusion of separation that we made up 6,000 years ago is an illusion that we made up 6,000 years ago, and just today, December 2023, we the people have figured out that everything's connected. Wow. Well done, humanity. Let's pat ourselves on the back. We just figured out that the lie we started with was a lie. And it just happened today. You're the first to hear about it. Aren't you excited to know that on this day, December 9th, 2023, we've actually established that we've been wrong for 6,000 years. And our story has been wrong for 6,000 years. And what's the problem with the story of separation? Well, everything. Because the minute we decide we're separated, then guess what can sneak in? Well, if I create the illusion that there's this gap, what happens with gaps? Something fills them. If we actually realized we were never separated from the creator energy in the first place, it would be really hard to have an intermediary get in between us. Because we'd go, sorry, we're connected. But if we create the story that says that we're separated, then we can have smart people come in and go, well, let me tell you how to get back together.
Great accent.
And then let me tell you how important it is that I'm part of that story. And then let me tell you how much it's important for you to actually subscribe to the following 15 things, and that's how you get connected as long as you keep paying your dues to, oh, that's right, my aerospace little side business. Listen, we make a story, we lie about the story, we create a gap, and then lo and behold, something fills the gap. Does that sound like a giant metaphysical mind bend, or does that sound like a plan? That's a plan. By the way, never, ever, 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 ever were we told that was good. But let's talk about day 2 again for a sec, because remember, I told you it's the only day God didn't say was fit for service, which is really an important point to look at, which is on the second day, God created an option. An option. He actually created a condition into which things could manifest, into which things could emerge. Cheryl and I had a beautiful podcast that I can't wait for the world to hear, where we talked about alchemical behavior. And day 2 was God the alchemist. He was creating the conditions in which transformation could occur. Why do I use the term alchemist? I won't spoil the podcast. You'll have to listen to Cheryl's podcast to find out why I use that term. But it's important that you realize that that was the conditions in which transformation could occur. And it turns out that transformation is neither good or bad. It's a process of the universe. So the reason why God didn't say that day was good or fit for service is because that day he created the conditions in which anything can happen. And you know what? When anything can happen, you cannot pass judgment on the anything that can happen. So he wasn't an idiot. He didn't forget. He wasn't going, oh, shoot, it's day 3. I forgot to say anything about day 2. He didn't do that. He just said, hey, I just created the kitchen into which we can start baking things. And then my favorite part, day 3. I love this part because it bends everybody's mind. Day 3, we get plants. And everybody's going, well, I don't see what the big deal about plants is. Well, the big deal about plants on day 3 is we don't have the sun until day 4.
Ooh. Intrigue.
Well, they didn't teach us that in kindergarten. They didn't teach us that in 1st grade, 2nd grade, 3rd grade, 4th grade, 5th grade, 6th grade, 7th grade, and they've never taught us that. But I love the fact that there's this cool YouTube video you can watch if you want to. It's really fun, and they try to describe photosynthesis. Funny as all get out. They use the term millions and billions of packets of light, which is how photosynthesis gets to work. And then it hits the photoreceptors in the leaf, and the photoreceptors in the leaf are the thing that stitch together the carbon, and that's how we get the thing that becomes glucose, or the thing that becomes fructose, or the thing that becomes sucrose. And according to the story, not only does that not actually happen, but more importantly, plants are growing without sunlight. They conclude the photosynthesis video on YouTube going, there is an infinite improbability that the energy will get to the center where the glucose gets put together. An infinite improbability that it'll happen. Or we could say, our model's wrong.
Yeah.
Our model's wrong. And what would happen if we found out that our motto was wrong? Well, then you might actually look at the things that plants make through a different lens. And you might not have idiots saying that climate change is a problem. The reason is because what you'd find out is that we actually don't even know what the carbon molecule that becomes hydrocarbon is. We don't even know what it is. We think it's stored sunlight. You know why? Because for thousands of years we've said, but it's stored sunlight, that's how it happens, except for the fact that day 3, there was no sun.
Magic.
So what was the light of day 1? And by the way, I'm not an advocate of book burning. I'm not. For the record, people watching online, I'm not advocating book burning. I am advocating going into every church, school, curriculum, and taking the picture of day 1, which ironically always seems to draw a sun, and tearing it up for the simple reason that the Bible says that day 4 was when the sun happened. I'm not saying burn the book. I'm saying burn the page and contribute the CO2 as penance back to the environment. Is that fair?
Yeah.
You're not burning a book, you're burning a page. That's a very important distinction. But why is this important? And by the way, you can see how long this is going to go. I haven't even gotten to the word yet. But this one is the big one. This is the big one. Because this is a story that's messed us all up. This is the story that's messed us all up. Because we actually think that God was a God of judgment on creation. Because we invented tov equals good versus there must be a bad because God said it was good. No, he didn't. And if we actually built everything in history on things that were fit for service or things that needed time to be fit for service, how much more merciful would we have a world?
Yeah.
Would we have to have? If we, it's not done yet. But we can put you in the oven a little while longer, and then you will be done. Listen, let's get really real. When I met Kim, I had a world that included out of my league. Okay? Some of you know what that means, and if you don't, you're an idiot. There's a league.
Back in the oven.
And then there's an out of my league. Now, where did that come from? That came from social programming. That came from a world that said when I was a kid, I had a particular role to play in my world, and my world did not include the pretty girl. That's a program that was put in my head. I'm not judging the program. It just was a program. I saw the Kims of the world, and I knew that's out of my league. And you got to hear all the way through this because it's a problem. I passed a judgment both on myself and on the Kim. You see that? I'm not good enough was a very comfortable place for me to live. Very comfortable. And I had a whole lot of reasons why I'm not good enough was very comfortable. So easy to fall into I'm not good enough. Do you know how much pain she has had to live through? Because I, in my 50s, am trying to figure out how to be good enough. And by the way, that has almost cost us the chance to have a relationship. Because she's sitting there going, you numbskull. That's how kind she usually is in those moments.
Could be other
Which
words.
part of I love you are you not getting? And I'm sitting there going, but you couldn't. Why? Because I'm judging the created order. And what am I judging? I'm judging a social feature space that was defined when I was a kid that said there is a your league and then there's the out of your league. That is so vile. But we justified it when we were kids because obviously God judges creation. Listen, people, I'm not playing here. If we actually pulled the weed out of the garden right now, pulled the weed out of the garden that said that God judged creation, therefore we are judged, we'd actually have a garden without weeds. We would. But we don't tell that story because it's great currency to keep people feeling small.
Yeah.
If you can keep people feeling small, guess what they are? They're safe to control. They're really safe to control. You can actually control them into all kinds of things. And it's really important for you to realize this isn't some philosophical mumbo jumbo. I'm serving back to each and every one of you exactly the story as it's written, not the story as it's told. Do you see the difference?
Brilliant.
We got to do that. Because then we have plants, then we have the stars and the sun, and also, I love how creation story tells the story, also the stars. Have you ever, like, oh yeah, also the stars. Have you ever looked at a picture of the Hubble Space Telescope?
Yes.
Have you ever looked at that picture and goes, oh yeah, also those? No, your mind is blown. You look at that picture and you go,
Wow.
Galaxies of galaxies, and then there's galaxies of those galaxies, and then you go, whoa! And I love how we throw it away. Oh, and also the stars.
That old thing.
That little thing. But you know the funny thing about the also the stars line is that most of us actually don't understand that there was a time when those things were being formed where there was light, and then that light started to organize into things we now call constellations. What's interesting about constellations is they used to mark seasons and times. They used to mark when to plant and when to harvest. They used to mark things that were actually important to us. It used to be that you didn't plant seeds when you felt like it. You planted seeds when all of the energy of the universe was beneficial for planting. That's how we used to do it. And we wonder why our nutrition in our food today is harmed. Why a tomato planted under the Farmer's Almanac in 1886 doesn't taste like a hydroponic piece of crap that's harvested out of a mass-produced greenhouse in China, harvested green, put in nitrogen, shipped across the ocean. We wonder why they don't taste the same. I'm not playing here, people. I'm not playing. We used to pay attention to the fact that the created order actually was worth watching. We actually lived in a world where that order had the ability to organize nutrients and energy and auspiciousness and warning and all of those things. We used to believe in a world that actually was created, are you ready for this? For our benefit. And now we're told, you'll eat crickets and be happy. I, for one, will not eat crickets and be happy. I have no intention of a cricket souffle, a cricket curry, a cricket casserole, upon which I put the cricket gravy. Ain't gonna happen. Okay? So what's happening here? You see what's happening? What's happening is the story we told then did the following, which is the biggest lie of all. And this is the word that's actually on the slide. So yes, I'm going to get to the slides. We said that humans would have dominion over it. Now, for those of you not familiar with the word dominion, dominion was a term that is derived from Latin. If any of you are facile with history, you might put your brain on for a moment and go, Latin was the Roman Empire. And then if you put your thinking caps on a little more, you'd go, well, I wonder if there's a Hebrew word that is dominion. Uh-oh. There isn't one. I wonder if the story you'll have dominion over was actually told by a conquering despot empire. And I wonder if every single preacher for the last 2,000 years has been standing on their head trying to rationalize how the created order, which is all interdependent, all of it is interdependent, put humans at the top of it. Because God didn't do that. As a matter of fact, if you try to unpack the term, rahwa, which is actually the term that was in the Hebrew, that was the term that was used to turn into the word dominion. If you go back and you look at that term originally, as far back as you can go, which, by the way, is only a couple thousand years. So we can't go back to when the oral tradition of that word exists. We don't even know what that is. But what we do know is that that word, if you add or subtract one of two little dots under one of the Hebrew characters, is either putting your foot on the neck of somebody to subdue them. That's option A with one of the dots. But option B, without one of those dots, is you are the emergent bloom of a stalk of a seed coming out of the ground, and you are leading the life into the light.
Ooh.
You want to pause with that one for a minute? You're leading the life into the light. If you had to take a guess, if you assumed that there was a merciful God, would your guess be that the best translation is putting your boot on the neck of creation? Or would your guess be that what God said was, be that emergent life that is leading life to light?
It's beautiful.
Did I just blow up every theology on the planet right there? I'm afraid I did. Because if we actually saw that, then we would see Adam and Eve hiding in the garden as God's heartbreak, not judgment. Right? We would see a heartbreak. We would actually see God showing up going, I like walking naked in the garden with these things because they're interesting. They have funny parts. I didn't know I had made all those funny parts, and I didn't know they did all the funny things that they do, or whatever. He had a lot of fun doing that. He was walking in the garden. They loved to go out in the evenings and walk in the garden and check everything out. And then one day he shows up and they're not there. And he's going, but I like these things. And what? They hid themselves? Really? You believe that? No. We created a story to justify a cruelty that never was in the created order. And we did it with the word dominion. Lord over. Boot on the neck. Never, ever in the text until an empire needed to be born. Come on, people. Come on. Come on. You can't do that. And by the way, we can't create a better future if we don't break the neck of this story.
Yeah. Brilliant.
Because this story is the first lie. This story from its roots is all a lie. There wasn't a cruel God trying to judge the creation, trying to make sure somebody was police force in chief, keeping a boot on the neck of creation. Last time I checked, none of you are very good at making honey. And just because you haven't gotten the memo of how that bee wing flapping communicates to other bee wings, don't tell me God didn't tell them how to do it. And don't tell me that God didn't tell them to have dominion over pollinating flowers. What are they doing? Their life leading to light. If you forget everything else that I said today, don't forget that. Because the hallmark of a heaven on earth is your life and your life force and our life force leading to light. That's it. And all I had to do was actually read Hebrew, not the King James Bible written by the Roman Empire. Isn't that fascinating? Isn't that fascinating?
What was the raw word of that Hebrew word again?
Raha. Yeah.
Kind of like raw.
Yeah, I like it. Raw. It's raw. It's raw, but raw in the best of ways. Isn't that beautiful? Isn't it beautiful just to sit and go, okay, that would be a better story?
Way better.
And what would we take away? The dominion story. We'd take away the judgment story. We'd take away the cruelty story. We would take away all those things, which were the justifications built on the back of an opening story that said dominion. Because dominion gives rise to the second word, which is in blue, defiled. If you're going to have dominion, something has to be less than. Has to be less than. It has to be. Because obviously you're most important, so we've got that established. Which means everything under that has to be defiled. You have to look down on things. How sad is that? How sad is it to live in a world where you actually are seen not as the essence of the elemental beauty that you are, but you are seen as the gender or the class or the race or the whatever, which then justifies your station in life. Kim, how do you feel about when people
Dominion.
decide what your station in life is? How does that work
It's
for
my
you?
favourite moment.
Yeah.
I love it when people tell me that I walk behind you and thanks for supporting David, and it's like, So I have to sit there with gritted teeth, and it's like, yeah, we have to, as human beings, men and women, and just as, good human beings, go, let's walk together, stop this automatic dismissal of anybody that you've decided you're better than, a man who's has dominion over a woman. Like, that just drives me insane, of course, because we can be beautiful together with our own gifts of being unique. It's like, I'll give a little example. As we were in New York a week ago, we went to this lawyer Christmas party, and I can't help it but study people because I do it all the time and just get wisdom and stuff around it. And I looked around the room, and I, of course, I know you're shocked, took it to the nines and had the most spangliest dress on, because if you're in New York, why on earth would you not? You're in the Rockefeller Center.
Rainbow room.
Rainbow room, and you take it up a notch. I looked around and I went, wow.
And it was up a couple notches, just for those of you wondering if it was a notch or a couple notches.
Yeah. I set a bar with spangles. A spangle bar was set. So I looked around and I thought, why are the women in this room drab? Like, it's like they're dressing like men. There were a lot of lawyers. And I was just watching it all, and I said to David, whenever I call it a pondering. I've got a pondering to discuss. And he goes, what's your pondering? And I go, I've worked something out. And I said, in this room, these women are dressing in grey and black and stuff, and like suit kind of things at a Christmas party. It's like, no way, this isn't okay. And I thought, if women, especially in that male-dominated industry, there's many of those, but this is one like that. I thought, imagine if the woman decided, you know what, I'm not going to try and be a man because there's clearly enough of them. I'm 10% in this room. I want to be a woman. And what would be my gift, say, in a courtroom, if I just said, the woman was in her dazzling feminine as a woman going, have you considered this? Because women are very intuitive, wise, that's what we are. That's our gift. We feel into things. We can look in a room and look at people. We can go, there's a thing we should consider in this case, or things like that, and shared that with the man who valued it and went, you know what? Wow, I've got to do the logical things or the step-by-step things, or follow a law rule to try and do it that way. And then she could come in with her wisdom and femininity and actually go, whoa, what a team. They've covered all bases. And she is valued for her and for being her, not for trying to blend in and meld with a man. Like, it's never going to work. And what a force. But no one was doing that. And actually, it was weird. I tried to explain it to one of the lawyers there, one of the women. Oh my God, it was a train wreck. And I said to her, And I said that story, and she kind of looked at me, and she was actually the most feminine woman in the room. And I said, so who's your mentor? And she said, the guy over there. And I said, oh, do you have any women lawyer mentors? Well, no, because he's good enough, kind of thing. And then she goes, see ya. And she ran off, and I thought, that's fine. But then I spoke to a few other women. You could watch them puzzle, and they go, yeah, like that really makes sense. We've got to start being, as women and men, valuing each other. It's not competitive. We both have beautiful gifts to dance together and just, blow the socks off the world. So, yeah, I do not like being in any way referred to as less than or a supportive of a man. We're supportive of each other, and that's what we do. So that's what we are leading by example and trying to share to people, because it's way more fun living like that. Who wants to be
So
oppressed?
now I'm going to poke the bear. Can I poke the bear?
You can,
All right, here we go. If you were to describe where you're sitting right now, what would you say? You are sitting on a...
fabulous, cool lounge that's got pizzazz.
Okay, fabulous, cool lounge. But where is that fabulous, cool lounge with pizzazz?
In the Church of Glad Tidings.
But what's it sitting on?
The stage.
Yeah, okay, so cool. So what did you see across the last 3.5 years about the technology of a stage?
Yes, so another pondering. Kim's ponderings. I would watch David on the stage and watch people, just kind of anyone on a stage, and was watching this whole, people on a stage in the COVID thing is a general thing, because we were around a lot of stages and a lot of presentations. And I made an observation saying, isn't it interesting that as soon as someone gets on a stage, we decide those who are not on a stage are less than, because they're elevated up there. So any person elevated, and especially a man on a stage, makes us shrink more, and especially as women. And there wasn't a lot of women on stages around there's not in general. If someone's sharing these kinds of things and what's possible, even when and it's not a man's fault. Even in the UK Parliament, you look around and every speaker there was a man presenting awesomeness, and they were all on. It would be lovely to start having, okay, well, what's my unique thing? Maybe it's a human factor to consider, or a people factor, or a come together kind of factor. Like, they're presenting awesome facts. There needs a humanity factor to come in, human factors, love factors, like, connective factors, which is what we do. And it's time that we did get up on those stages too. But what David loves also to do is he doesn't like to be on a stage. He would rather be, and we would rather be, with everybody. Because we get on a stage, we don't have all the answers, and it's like we're not a God person, and it's like something triggers in people where they shrink and decide that person then has our back or our best interests, or they're more powerful, or all that, because they've been asked to be on a stage and they're physically elevated. And yeah, that was just an observation I thought, and we would say to people, because they'd often say, David, what's the answer? Or Kim, what's the answer? But mainly to David, because they automatically, something in them is so used to, because of the way we're being conditioned, that something out there or someone on a stage is more than them. And it's like, no, we have a gift of sharing what we're sharing now, but we don't have what you have, and you don't have what we have, and you all have your unique awesomeness. And the world is too sped up sometimes for people to sit and find out what their special thing is and put the time and effort into that. Like I explained my painting, if I kept letting that slide, people looking at a picture is no different. It is different to say David speaking something amazing. If someone says it in a picture, it just ignites something different in someone, all coming together. It's just that if he does it in a speech, if I can do it in a picture, it covers all the bases. So,
which is important on this part of the conversation, because we don't even see the subtlety of where this dominion defiled thing happens. We actually think of this as acceptable. We think this is just normal. Of course, you have people who are presenting, they're on a stage, and then there's the people in the audience, but we don't see what's happening. We don't observe what's happening. We don't consider, I wonder if the technology called stage is born of a story. You see what happened? And the reason why we wanted to bring this part of the conversation into this part of the presentation is because it's critical that we realize that the subtle messages that we send aren't subtle. They are based on the process of reifying a broken story. And what we need to be able to see is that there are many places where we would go, well, it's innocent. Dave and Kim aren't trying to speak down to people, right? And objectively, that's true. But socially, we've developed a set of programming in our mind that justifies a thing that should not be justified. There's no reason, by the way, why we couldn't be in the pit and you are elevated in the bleachers. There's no reason. As a matter of fact, for a very, very, very long time, that's exactly how things were done. Go back to every Greek theater. You know who was at the lowest position? The speaker. And you know what happened in Greek theater? We had 1,000 years of philosophy about human potential. You know who invented the stage? The Romans.
There's a surprise.
Why? Dominion over. Okay? And by the way, it's in the architecture. You cannot find the evidence of anything other than they even built it into the reality. Okay? I'm belaboring this point for an important reason. Heaven on earth cannot include a better than or worse than class. I don't care how you do the class. It can't include that. You can't have that as part of the architecture because it's not heaven for somebody. Right? It isn't. Somebody is going to feel like they're the second-class citizen. That's the nature of those kinds of dominion stories, defiled stories. And until we break that narrative everywhere we see it, we don't have a chance. So, let's break the narrative. It's not hard. Because those two things then contribute to the next knowledge-based story we tell, which is dependence. You need. Do you? I had a lovely chat with Dave and Cheryl yesterday, and we talked in one of the elements of that chat about the famine in Ethiopia. I find this to be one of the most dreadful stories that never gets told, except by me. You remember We Are the World? We are the world. We are the children. We are the ones to make a better place, so let's start living. I could just roll on this one, man.
I won't
just
join
felt
in.
it.
My voice is just too amazing.
Would you join in with me?
Never.
That's
You wouldn't
so...
want that. It'll hurt your ears.
Yeah. Interesting thing about that story is that the famine in Ethiopia, if those of you remember that famine, was brought to us by the United Nations. And I'm particularly fond, by the way, of the United Nations. They're a phenomenal organization. Big fan. Extra points for everything that they do, I'm sure. But it turns out that most of you don't know neural anatomy enough to know that young children need a high-fat diet. The reason why they need a high-fat diet, the reason why breast milk for a lactating mother is rich in fat is because nerves, when they are growing, require an enormous amount of fat. The myelination sheath that goes onto nerves, all the other pieces of nerves need a lot of fat. So thankfully, breast milk has a lot of fat in it. Early childhood food has a lot of fat in it, and the reason why you need it is because you need a lot of fat to make sure nerves are developed so you can have cognitive functioning, motor functioning, and everything else. Really important. So we would agree that if you, for example, wanted to have a diet that would actually foster a great childhood development, you'd want a place where you could have a high-fat diet. And I don't mean getting fat, I mean eating high-fat diets. Now, most of you don't know that one of the highest fat density algae that exists on Earth grows in Ethiopia. In Ethiopia. Ironically, this particular algae grows in some very bizarre places, like in some of the heated springs and other places where people actually kind of look at it and go, ooh, that's kind of ooey gooey stuff. But it turns out it's highly nutritious and it has a huge, huge, huge fat density. You remember the pictures that we used when we are the worlding? Little skinny kids, bloated stomachs, blank stares, clearly not functioning neurologic systems. You remember those pictures? Isn't it ironic that bread does you absolutely no good to build neurologic, high-fat tissue for neurologic development? And isn't it ironic that the United Nations decided that the way we solve a starvation problem is to make sure we ship cereal grains in the form of bread to Africa, which then molded and spoiled on the docks because we couldn't get it to the people who needed it. And we are the genocidal maniacs who were unwilling to actually redefine what food is. Because it turns out that the millions of people who died of starvation in Africa did not die of starvation, they died of ignorance. Ladies and gentlemen, that's a tragedy. It is a tragedy that we let millions of children go to their death and millions more go into adulthood with no neurologic capability. We let that happen because we decided that algae isn't food. You know what didn't decide that? The infinite wisdom of a creator that said, I know there are going to be people who have a tough time developing, so what am I going to do? In those areas where that's the case, I'm going to put a highly nutritious, high-fat content algae so they can thrive in their environment. But because somebody had a PhD in agro-development and went over to Ethiopia and said, nope, what you need to wait for is our rice, our cereal grains, our bread, we let millions of people die, and we destroyed the lives of millions of more, dying right next to the very food that would have not just sustained them, would have made them thrive. It feels like an intentional genocide, doesn't it? And isn't it funny that we all rallied around this nonsensical "We Are the World" song? Do you remember at Christmas? Do they know it's Christmas time at all? Remember that one? Live Aid? Do they know it's Christmas time at all? You know who doesn't give a shit about Christmas? An African child who is starving. And do you think anybody on a stage in Wembley or in New York or in LA or anywhere else actually gave a shit about Christmas either? No. They were whitewashing a genocide built on the illusion of dependence, where we were going to tell people who have lived for tens of thousands of years in their ecosystem, we were going to tell them they needed bread. And the reason is because the Bible is abundantly clear on the importance of bread. It actually says, man shall only eat by bread alone. Come on, people. Where's our heart? Seriously, where's our heart? How many of you listened to that song and kind of went through the shopping? It's Christmas time. And then you played it on the car radio, and then you did this, and you go, oh, yeah, I'll dial up. There's a phone-a-thon, and I'll put $10 into the thing, and blah, blah, blah. You were whitewashing genocide every time you heard that song. And we sit there and go, well, how did Fauci do it? How did Bill Gates do it? Really easy. Really easy. I told you that the system that's working is working really well. So well that you still hear that jingle today when people are doing the Christmas mix. Somewhere is, do they know it's Christmas time at all? And not one person raises their hand and goes, Hitler, would you hit stop on that button. Nobody does it. Why? Because we're dependent. We're dependent on somebody else who knows the something else that knows the something else, and they know better than us. Because clearly the people who would go to the algae pits in Ethiopia are uncivilized. And what do we have to do? Well, we have to civilize them. We have to make sure they become dependent on the United Nations, because God help you, you wouldn't want people to be able to thrive on their own, would you? So we make up a story. And the story that we make up is they're poor, they don't know what they're doing, they're naked, they're heathens, they're whatever else. They are the whatever we decide to call them. See how this story is being built? By the way, you see it? I'm only doing this whole nonsense right now to say it's easy for us to change this story. But we have to know that it is a story to change it. You can't change a story that you don't know is a story because you've habituated that, well, that just happened. Just happens. It just happens that these things happen. No, it doesn't. It is a way to, using the term that is all through the middle parts of the Old Testament that nobody likes to read, it is searing the conscience. What does it mean to sear a conscience? Well, that means to take a really hot brand and you go ahead and you burn a thing, but it's hot enough that the thing doesn't really bleed out. You cauterize all of the blood vessels, so you stop the flow. But unfortunately, you leave the scar. And I'm sitting in a room with a bunch of people right now, and if we're honest with each other right now, including myself, we can easily say, oh my goodness, I see the brand, right? I see the scar. This isn't time to go, oh, how do I get rid of it? No, this is time to examine that scar and go, how much of We Are the World, Africa aid program, how much of that got us ready for COVID?
Yep.
These things are not accidents. Because if I can get a population to stop caring about, I don't know, letting children starve, do you think I'm going to have a problem if and I'm saying this on record, and I want this thing to be a 90-second clip that people blast around the world. I want Texas Baptist Children's Hospital right now to hear my voice.
Yeah.
You are not just not Christian and Baptist. You are full on the Antichrist. The minute you decide that a child can't come to your hospital if they're not fully vaccinated, I never read anywhere in the New Testament, ever, I never read Jesus walking through a crowd, walking up to a blind man, going, well, I could spit on the ground and make some mud and put it on your eyes, but could I see your vax card first? And I'll tell you what, the Southern Baptist Convention, the American Baptist Council can hear my words right now. There is a special place in hell for anybody who decides to deny access to a child who needs help. Period.
Yeah.
And I don't care what color your doctrine is or anything else. If you, as a Baptist, can in good conscience honestly tell me that denying access to a child to medical care is justified based on your nonsensical, pathogenic promotion of a death shot, you're not just not doing the right thing, you are doing something that unambiguously, by the statement of Christ himself, is you are actually sending a child into oblivion, and that, according to the Lord himself, was very clearly the worst of all sins. Not kind of the bad ones, In the giant list of everything you can do, in the giant list of all the grievances that Jesus ever judged, denying a child access was the only capital crime that Christ ever mentioned. So take that, Baptists, and solve your problem. Before Christmas, frickin' repent.
Yeah, brilliant.
And I might have just offended a Baptist. And if I just offended a Baptist, bring it on. I got more hellfire coming. That is despicable. But it only could come in a world of dominion, defilement, and dependence. If we didn't have those three things, we wouldn't be able to close the doors to unvaccinated children at Texas, get ready for this, Christian hospital. You think Christianity has a branding problem?
Yep.
The last time I checked, that's a branding problem. And by the way, turns out it is the only, of all of the things you could do wrong in life, the only capital offense Jesus ever said was a capital offense. Sorry, but that's kind of a bad piece of news for a whole bunch of people who are more than happy to wrap a flag around themselves, say that they're Christian, and I'm sure there's going to be a whole lot of people online that are going to have a heyday with what I just said. Guess what?
Bad luck.
Tar and feather my tail on my way out.
Woohoo! Boom.
I told Kim that I was going to keep myself calm.
No, you didn't.
Yeah, I did. I said we were going to stay.
Oh, yeah, fun. Yeah, fun.
This is the calm.
Sometimes you
calm.
need it. No.
No, but I mean,
proud
listen,
of you.
people. Listen, people. We
Needs
have
it.
to call a spade a spade. This,
Yep,
this is not
absolutely.
something that you can actually hide behind. And
Yep.
the fact that we are silent is complicity. We can't be silent.
Yes.
So this is one where you can't just sit back and go, well, they got it wrong. No, you have to call it out. That's what we have to do.
Yep.
Okay? So far, we're halfway through the first thing, and you're sitting there going, oh my goodness, we got a problem because we only got an hour to go, and we got a long time to get there. But the reason why these first three bubbles are going to take the longest time is because they do take the longest time. These are the weeds that are deepest in the garden. They are the deepest. And every one of these things, you just can't round up. You can't spray these things and get rid of them. You actually have to pull them out. Kim, one of the things that we've been doing a lot lately is we've been actually trying to deal with triggers in our life. Like when something happens and it kind of sets us off. And one of the things that we've realized in the last couple of years, and mostly in the last year, but in the last couple of years, is almost all of our triggers come from something, a story or a something. And most of our conflict that comes from that is actually not ours, but it's something else. Would you unpack what that dependency story and what the defiled story and what the dominion story, what happens in a relationship when you actually engage the trigger that you have instead of engaging the person you're with?
This is my most favourite pondering
This is her most favorite pondering of all time.
my life at the moment. I'm loving this part. I would, of course, be watching David and I have these conflicts and sort of go, what is going on? Because when we met...
You can tell the story.
Yeah, when we met in Antarctica, as some of you knew, we had this huge connection, and the world as such wasn't around us because, of course, we're in Antarctica. So all the challenges of life that weren't ours were not present. So we immediately connected, like so deeply. And then, of course, we walk out into the world and all the different things, life and all that kind of stuff happen. And I kind of thought, this is really interesting. And what I worked out and said to David, I said, if you could zoom back and look at the Kim and David character and stop the personal kind of thing and just see there's Kim and David in the world our essences, our personalities, you could see that our essence selves were here. They met in Antarctica, but they didn't get to express again, because what happened was all the triggers of the world that were never ours, whatever that was, he had his that he brought to the relationship, I had mine. We all have our own triggers or things or, challenges, traumas, whatever the thing is. And if someone or something, it appears to be, oh my God, they're doing that same thing that was a challenge for me as a child. He sounds like, the abusive stepfathers I had. And then I could say or do something that would appear to be like his mother, who was, a very challenging person and was not a kind mother and different things. And so David had a lot of his things. So he would appear to be something that reminded me of, a traumatic experience. I would then be something that would remind him of that. Neither of us were doing anything to each other. It was a reminder of stuff that needed to surface. So stuff that had never had light shot on it, stuff to be healed. And I think a lot when couples come together, instead of thinking, oh my God, they're this, that, the other, you go, hang on, what are the gifts each other are giving? Let's dissolve our non-essence parts and then become our essence self. So how I would describe it, because I'm very visual, I would go, it's like we're going along fine, ish, but we hadn't really let all these other energies go and kind of really seen each other. We would go into what I call the Tasmanian devil dance. So we'd be here and never actually hearing each other, fixing anything. So we're in emotion too, and we all know when we're in emotion, there's no logic, there's no kind of measured space. And it's like our energy gets taken from us, like our life force as a couple and as an individual goes, feeds an energy, like we just don't have, our life force is taken, like you shrink, you're not creative anymore, you're living in survival because all of your good energy is taken because, we're fighting up here rather than going, hang on a minute, that's appearing to be like that. Let's really look and speak together and actually go and have a really great conversations in beautiful spaces and actually said, let's really unpack all of these things together and spend the time on our relationship. So the David essence and the Kim essence, which is actually a perfect match in beautiful way. Like, yes, we're opposite people, but our opposites are actually great gifts to each other. Like, that we're opposite, it's obvious. And that's great. Because if I was sitting up here being another David, we would be competitive because you can't coexist like that. There has to be that beautiful, balance of each other. And the masculine, feminine, just different energies. We bring in great things. Like I know David's always wanted joy and fun and vibrancy in his life. And, like I embody that and then bring in an accent and slang and all the things he could possibly want. I wanted stability, strength, a more grounding thing because I can be very flighty and here, there and everywhere, and it's, I'm more measured and get things done around David, amongst many other things. But instead of going, God, we're so different, it's so annoying, it's like, hang on a minute, what is the gift? Each comes together, so if you have two different things, it makes a whole. And that's, our power.
And do you depend on me, or do we actually not have dependence at all?
No, definitely not. You couldn't depend on someone. It's also like looking at the other person and it's like, how can you also help each other rise? Like, and if you go to catch yourself going, because I could easily say, which I did do when I met David, after, like I didn't know who he was when I met him in Antarctica, and I gave him tons of wisdom about what I saw and things about him, because I can't help doing that. I do it to anyone who wants it or sometimes doesn't want it. I see a version next to them. He didn't want it.
I don't think I said I wanted it.
No, but I badgered the hell out of him for 3 hours on an Antarctic ship about what I saw, because I knew he was this powerful force already. And then my intuition said if he includes his well-being and includes the David factor of the man, his force would be huge. And I kind of went about my way going, and I felt this urgency, because I said, wow, because I saw him here already amazing, doing all sorts of stuff, and then I saw him here, and it was nothing to do with, he wasn't broken, he wasn't anything to do, it was more to turn off our hamster wheel of our suppression of ourselves, all the things we tell ourselves that we're not good enough, and all of our programming and things like that that are never ours, non-essence parts. if David was essence David, whew, what a force. And of course, no one wants that, and they don't want the force of a woman being their full essence parts. They don't want or you guys having your full essence expressed. If you take the time and kind of, look at those things and then go, look, because I'm not dependent on him, but I love the fact that me being on a stage today for the first time with David, who is a force, I could easily have gone, okay, well, I'm not enough and all these kinds of things, or whatever the things are. But it's no, we help each other. Like I'll bring a humour into this and just a difference than what you normally hear him speak. Not better or worse, just different. And then he gives me a confidence and a strength to help me in my early stages of doing this, like what you see he's doing. He's going, okay, I'll ask you some questions and stuff, because I, at this point, am not an expert at being a speaker. It doesn't come so natural, I think, to a woman in general, because we're more feeling, seeing things than trying to get all that out into words is not our strength. But doesn't mean we can't practice it, and doesn't mean he can't then go, well, I've never had joy and stuff in my life because as a kid I had all these challenges and stuff. Doesn't mean I can't learn and flex that muscle. It's just going to the gym kind of thing. So, yeah. Do you want me to tell the thing about the... I want to add a really important part in case I forget it, because when we were talking last night, I thought this would be so helpful because it's a lived experience and stories like that are always very helpful. It's exactly on this topic. When I got back from Antarctica, because I didn't know that David did all this cool stuff in the world, and as a default and a reflex, a lot of people, especially women, will decide they're less than. And the man is all powerful and all that kind of stuff, and if he's a speaker and doing all this cool stuff. So then I found out all the things that he did. So I was able to be my real self with him when I didn't know all that stuff, and say what I felt and give him a lot of feedback and stuff like that and help him. But then I started finding out more about what he was doing, and I decided, oh my gosh, I shrunk. But then I knew enough about my studies of human behaviour and stuff like that to know, hang on, why have I done that? And then I thought, what is it? So I just asked a question, which is a very important thing that any of you could do. If you start to put someone on a pedestal and diminish yourself, say, what is it specifically about that person that you're feeling you don't have, or that you're not enough, or that they're better than you, and things like that. Mine was easy. I could go, well, he has all this intelligence. So I said, okay, so ask yourself, because everyone's a mirror of you, and if you see it in someone, it's in you. It's just a matter of owning it, and you've got to own it to the same capacity. So I sat there going, okay, well, where am I intelligent, and who's seen it, and stuff like that, and I was writing lists and lists and lists, and it just wasn't landing. The energy wasn't shifting, because when the energy shifts, you feel it, and I still felt small and that he was better than me. Which is ironic because he was having his own story going on that I was better than him. So, it's just in whatever form it takes, there's all these energies out to keep you small. And so I just went, this is just... And I stopped thinking. So then I went putting it down, the piece of paper, because I was in my head, and just let it go. And I thought the wisdom will come to me. And then as soon as I did that, it was like, look at the word wisdom. Everything is just a word anyway. It's like intelligence. Let's look at the word wisdom. Let's just change that word, because do you think David's really wise? Hell yeah. And to me, wisdom is intelligence in action. It's like tons of people could be intelligent, but what are they doing with it? What are they changing the world with? Like, he has super intelligence. It's amazing, and we all know that. And that's a gift for now. It's so important for now. He has to have all those things in all that he does. But he spreads it out, like he shares it. It's like he sits on a stage and shares it with you. He doesn't keep it to himself. He doesn't sit and write a book and hope you all kind of read it. He gets out there in the world all the time and puts that intelligence into action, and that is then wise. And then with doing that, then you guys get wise and share it with other people. It has this beautiful flow-on effect. And then it was like, okay, where are you as wise as David? And that was much easier for me to manage, and immediately, because I wasn't all in my head, because I was still in just surrendering and kind of going, the wisdom will come. It was like, no one else has spoken to David in Antarctica and given him the wisdom to change his life like you did. And because it was such a powerful thing that I did for him, instead of thinking the thousands of things where David's been intelligent and spoken, one event had as much impact for him that I was able to speak to him in a space on the Antarctic ship and say, how amazing would you be if you included you in your life? There was many other versions of doing that. What about
There were many other versions.
What about you're on your deathbed, let's look over your life, you know, where are you included in it? All these different versions of, is he hearing it? And I'm just like, because I wanted him to rise to his full potential. And he wanted that for me, and that was my gift for him. So once I owned that, and I felt the shift. And I was like, I am, not less than it was a gift through the trigger, through me shrinking. Don't let yourself go down and shrink. Just go, hang on, what's the gift in this? Dig deep and go, what is it about that person? Where is my thing? And stick with it till you find your magnificence, and then you rise to your next version of your best self.
That's the thing I wanted you to get to. Which gives us the opportunity to then jump into the 3 little bubbles on the left. Need, acquire, and survive. Need, acquire, and survive. I'm going to say something that's really, really simple. You don't need anything. Nothing. Every single person who's sitting in this room, every single person who's hearing my voice, every single person in the world does not need anything. We were born into a world that actually conspires for our survival and goodness. Not just survival, but goodness. This is not about just getting along. I love the very famous quote from the Sufi master who said, "I will gladly reach my hand into the den of the viper, because I know next to the den of the viper the Almighty has placed the antidote," which was the basis of Avicenna's Persian medicine. He actually knew that the world was designed so that, and by the way, nobody ever asked him, well, why are you reaching your hand into a viper's den? Which would have been a good question to ask, maybe. But that wasn't the question. It was a statement that says that the Almighty has organized the world in such a way that if you find yourself in a place, the things that are required for you to actually manifest life in that space are there. You just have to change your perspective. Right? If you're looking for a loaf of bread in Ethiopia, you're an idiot. That's not where loaves of bread are the thing you'd look for. Similarly, if you're in the Gobi Desert, as some of you know, I spent a lot of time in the Gobi Desert, and you're looking for, I don't know, something that tastes good, anything that tastes good, like anything, please, that tastes good, please. If you're looking for something that tastes good, you're not going to find it, because the only thing you find in the Gobi Desert is, are you ready for this? Camels. Oh, trust me, it's worse than just the ick. Those of you who don't know, camels eat as ruminants not only the grass, but they eat down into the dirt. They get the root level of the grass. That's how they eat. Now, the reason they do that is because they literally taste the micronutrients in the dirt, and that changes their liver and kidneys, so they become the desert they're in.
Whoa.
You hear what I just said? They become the desert they're in. That's the reason why we go, well, how do they go so long without drinking? Because they're not a camel, they are the desert. Their physiology changes so that they don't actually not only need to drink, right? Our story, need. They don't need to drink. They simply become their environment. Isn't that cool?
That's super cool.
You know what's bad about that? Their meat tastes like, oh my God. Let me count the ways that you do not want camel meat. All of them. You know that really great Bubba Grump shrimp? We could have shrimp scampi, you could have shrimp casserole, you could have fried shrimp, you could have Well, let me just say that film very clearly never tried to do the same thing with camel, because there is no preparation of camel that you can have that anybody's going to make a restaurant out of. Cheryl would do well in the Gobi Desert because she would be led by the Lord to fast.
Perfect timing.
I'm telling you that while the Lord may lead her to fast, the camel meat will get her there faster. But the other thing you have in the Gobi Desert is this little tiny thing that kind of looks like a cactus flower that comes out of the ground. And it's purple. And you just find this little tiny thing. And if you squeeze the juice of it, it apparently has more vitamin C than, I don't know, every other thing in the universe. And there's a thing called a kind of a berry they have down there that actually does the same thing. They have this super high dose, thousands of times dose of a normal vitamin C thing. And little tiny pebbles, little tiny plants, little tiny things that are full of vitamin C. Amazing. And those are the two things you have. And the camel preparations are quite delightful. The camel preparations are things like camel, dried camel, roasted dried camel, conveniently camel soaked in camel milk, and now that we're onto the milk side of it, camel milk, camel yogurt,
Camel vodka.
camel vodka, called arhi. That's the only way you can make vodka, and they do, and they make a lot of it. Camel yogurt, camel cheese, camel butter. And the cool thing is, every once in a great while, in my case, it was every about second or third day, you'd get a tiny little glass of water, and on the outside of that glass was camel dung. So if you're drinking the water,
Bit of
you're
fiber.
drinking camel dung flavored water. It's kind of an energy drink for Genghis Khan. Think of it as Gatorade for the soul. You don't drink a lot of it. No, but I do have a little bit of the flavor home that I was given by the Mongolian government recently. And it's fun to give people something that
Snacks.
says, this is
Camel
Mongolian
snacks.
candy, and watch their face. That happens to be made out of a very particularly fermented yak curd, which is even more dramatic than the camel. But the cool thing about it is, even in the Gobi Desert, you don't need anything. Need and acquisition and survive go hand in hand. Now, I don't know how many of you are familiar with this concept, but the idea of fight and flight, you know that idea? Right, that we all are naturally born to have it, doesn't exist. That was invented largely in the natural philosophy of the last 250 years, popularized by none other than our lovely friend who's given us, obviously, what real science is.
Fauci.
Are you ready for this? Yeah, not Fauci. But Darwin's evolution of the species. He's the one that gave us the fight-flight paradigm. It turns out that you actually have a nerve in your face called the trigeminal nerve, and when you put your face into cold water, which is called the mammalian dive reflex, which was developed so that if you actually ever fell into cold water, you wouldn't drown. You would actually survive cold water immersion, because that's how the infinite wisdom of the universe decided to put you together, which is if you fall into freezing water, you don't drown. Sound like a good plan? Yeah. I think it sounds like a good plan. If breathing is important to you, it'd be a great idea to have a nerve in your face that actually activates so that when you go into frozen water, you actually stop breathing. And more importantly, what happens is blood shunts into the inner organs so that you actually don't have brain damage or heart damage or anything else. And that's called the trigeminal nerve. That is, in fact, designed into each and every one of you so that you don't die if you fall through the ice. Kind of an interesting little, didn't know that. But the fascinating thing about the trigeminal nerve is that the only nerve that we actually have is not a fight or flight, it's a calm nerve. Did you hear me? It's a calming nerve. The only nerve we have calms us. Fight or flight is the absence of calm. It's not a reflex. Did you hear what I just said? We've invented the idea of fear and survival and need and we have to acquire because it might come in handy down the road for the rainy day that we didn't know was coming and all that kind of stuff. We've created those things off of a false model of even the self-evident nature of the indictment of the model in our face. Yeah. Our face says that we are wired to thrive, including when we're drowning, which is kind of a high bar. We can thrive drowning. That's how we're made. There's no such thing as a fight or flight reflex. And I love asking the question of a lot of audiences, exactly why do we think we have a fight or flight response? And the reason is because we've decided that fear is an acceptable driver of behavior. And so we actually say it's natural. God made us that way. No, it is not natural. Natural is calm. You have a nerve that calms you. You do not have a nerve that stimulates you except for the absence of calm, which is getting to the point of you're wired for calm. You are not wired for fear.
Or for sound.
But Dave, what about the lion that's chasing the gazelle in the savannah? Yeah, what about it? How about this? What if you actually look at the metabolic pattern of meat while an animal is activating its aerobic muscle tissue, and you start pumping all of those hormones into that meat? You know what you do? You make it more digestible. Is it the case that the lion is chasing the gazelle, or is it the case that the gazelle is marinating the meat? Listen carefully, so that it has a better experience being digested by the lion. Now, here's the problem that a lot of people have with what I just said. They say the lion killed the gazelle. And that is a way to narrate that story. But there's an equal and opposite way to narrate the same story. And by the way, I learned this in depth from the Incas in Peru. They said something that just bent my mind the first time I heard it. They said, when the community is hungry, a llama will walk out of the herd, it will walk into the community and bow its head, at which point in time, the community, in gratitude, accepts that llama as part of their sustenance. I was sitting there going, that is nonsense, except for the fact that it isn't nonsense. That actually happens. When the community is hungry, a llama goes into the community and offers itself to become part of the community. Now, we can't even wrap our head around what I just said. Why? Because we've been told survival, survival, survival. Need, acquire, acquire, survive, survive, survive. But that's not the way the world was ever meant to be. Did you ever ask this question? Why do some snakes have a paralytic venom, but they eat a live animal? Why do some snakes constrict an animal because they need the anaerobic metabolic pathway? Why do some snakes eat the thing whole, still kicking, and have their digestion active in an aerobic animal still living inside the snake? If we were stupid people and believed in Darwin, we'd go, well, snake's a snake's a snake, except for the fact that they're not. Some of them need to keep the animal breathing so that they can digest it. Some of them need to make the animal anaerobic so they constrict it. Some of the animals need to do, and listen, this is a simple observation, but we don't make the observation because we were told that the world was all about survival. I talked yesterday briefly about the fun of one of my most famous bizarre little mind bends possible, which is the snakes that live in the Catamo caves in Mexico. Now, these snakes naturally live on the ground, live in trees, do what snakes usually do. That's what they usually do. But in the cave, which happens to be one of the most prolific bat caves in Mexico, the snakes hang from the ceiling. You heard what I just said. The snakes hang from the ceiling. And in the evening, when the bats fly out, the snakes, now living in the ceiling, reach down and catch a bat and eat the bat. Now I'm going to ask you a question. How do they know to do that? Because the snakes are ground living animals. But in that cave, the snakes live in the ceilings. The question that I would posit, with the evidence of reality, is that somehow or another the information about hanging from ceilings is somehow being conveyed from the thing, a snake, to a bat, and from a bat to a snake. Those snakes are having their bat-like experience. Listen, people, this isn't crazy. This is a different narrative. Do you hear what I'm saying? I'm not telling you that there's not violence in the world. I'm not telling you that there isn't predation. I'm simply saying that because we've developed a story that is based on predator-prey, do you hear dominion in that story? Yeah. Right? We're not even willing to consider that maybe what's happening is that the bat is flying into the mouth of the snake to have its snake experience. Would you be willing to take mRNA-injected beef if you doubted what I just said? Listen carefully. Would you be willing to take mRNA-injected beef if you doubted what I'm saying? No, because you realize that when they inject a cow, the cow experience that you're going to have isn't a cow experience anymore. It's a genetically modified cow experience, and you don't want to have it.
Hell no.
Right, but here's the problem. The problem is we're not having these conversations. So we're sitting there going, we're pretty sure that GMO food is a bad idea. But on the same time, we actually believe in the predation-prey story, and that's not true. The truth is, you are taking the intelligence of the thing that was the thing, you're bringing it into your body, and in gratitude, remember Peter, when the sheet was dropped from heaven? Right? And he goes, Lord, don't tell me to eat this stuff. It's unclean. And what did God say to Peter? Don't ever call what I've made unclean. Right? Get up, kill, and eat. What's that meaning? That means that he's supposed to take into his being a permanent record of the purification of God's creation. That's what it means. That's exactly what that means. But we don't teach that. We go, well, no, it's meat. It's not a cow. No, it's a cow. And you are actually bringing the spiritual energy of that cow into your being. And in gratitude, according to the story about Peter, God's saying, don't call it unclean, accept it with gratitude. Does that sound like predation and prey? No. It says Peter needed a lesson in purification. You know how he got it? By eating pork. No, he was eating all kinds of things. There were snakes in it. There were pigs in it. There were all kinds of things in it. In that sheet, there was all sorts of stuff. It was a drive-by shooting of unclean animals. And the most amazing thing is, what was the purpose of it? The purpose of it was a way in which Peter needed to get out of his own way. I'm telling the world how I need to survive. I'm telling the world how I need to stay pure. I'm telling the world. And God's going, hey, Peter, you're missing the plot, dude. You're missing the plot. And I'm going to give you the opportunity of eating an unclean animal so you incorporate that into your being. The biblical principle is not surviving. The biblical principle is in gratitude, ingesting into your being the intelligence of the created order so you become more intelligent. Yeah. Oops. Man, I wish I could. Something along the lines of, the beauty of this whole story is that what this is you are actually being asked to consume in gratitude the intelligence of that life so that it actually embodies in you as the wisdom and the intelligence of the created order. Think about how grateful we would be if we genuinely, before a meal, had genuine gratitude for the things we're going to consume. I'm not talking about the drive-by shooting prayer. I'm not saying, thank God for bringing all this food to our table. I'm saying, what's the wisdom? What's the wisdom that I'm about to take into myself? And how am I going to use that wisdom to inform a better version of my life? How would I actually be if I, for example, went and had a bowl of rice, and before I actually had that bowl of rice, I actually tuned into the consciousness of the mud and the wet soil into which that rice was planted. And then I tuned into the hands that pushed those stalks into the ground. And then I actually tuned into the people who knew when to drain the fields and when to actually allow the rice to harvest. And then I tuned into the hands that thrashed the husks off that rice. And I did all that. What if that was my gratitude prayer? Thank you for those hands. Thank you for those muddy feet. Thank you for everything. Because what am I taking into my body? I'm not taking in a grain of rice. I'm taking in the sum of energy, which is this beautiful dance between humanity that knows that if you put the stalk in the ground, the harvest is going to be abundant. Wow, that's gratitude.
Yeah, brilliant.
Right? Slow the tape down. What do you need? What you need, if there is a need, is a consciousness that is unseared. But that's not because the created order needed the need. It's because we created a mess, and we need to clean it up.
Yeah.
That's not what any of you expected for the first hour and a half of this presentation. And the cool thing is, that's the point.
Yeah.
Because people ask us all the time, how do you guys get the perspective you get? From the sheep. We get this perspective because we try to live this level of consciousness. Mm-hmm. That's what we try to do. We actually try to live so consciously that we actually don't take for granted the things that we take for granted. Because Kim, if you were to walk into your cupboard right now at home,
Which
and
one?
I don't care which one, would you say you need anything?
Well, next week Cheryl might tell me I need something spangly in Vegas. So I don't. There's a future need, yes.
Future needs?
No, I don't actually practically need anything. No.
Practically need anything. Listen, we can have fun with this. We can have a lot of fun with this. We have been told to have a world in which we measure ourselves based on the things we acquire.
Yep.
But could you end this inner story, since we're talking about the last piece, the well-being piece, could you tell a story about the way in which you move from a thing that you didn't even know you needed, theoretically, through a process where you actually arose to a better version because you experienced a thing that you didn't need, but an experience that you had to have?
Okay, what I think you mean by that.
Let's see how good this is. She gave me the list of things she's going to talk about. I'm actually trying to give her the list back.
It's clues. Yeah, so any of my friends that know me and know that I have a lot of clothes and love to feel good. And I always try to share with people, don't be drab, like put effort into yourself and you will feel good. Like it just matters. And I always try to, or just do not try to, I actually love and enjoy, what David calls adorning myself, and it has a flow-on effect because anyone that comes to our house or our workshops that we've had in our house many times, you look at someone and you can be inspired by them and you go, okay, wow, she's wearing that, I hadn't thought of that, or that jewelry or that kind of thing. And I love how people go, oh my God, I feel like when I'm around you, I'm going to get out my jewelry again and things like that have put, especially in the last few years where people have been wearing, sweatpants and all the different things because they've been at home and forgetting their pizzazz, and I just won't allow it any longer. And yeah, I love how it's inspiring for people to, especially women, to go, oh, can I have some help with, what to wear or an outfit or jewelry and things like that. And so I happily decorate them and make that, it helps, and then they feel good. Like you just do. And then they do it to someone else, or then they start going online and getting things, and I'll, say, have you thought of this kind of combination or things like that? I often share my clothes, my jewelry, my ideas to help people feel good. I unfortunately or fortunately decorate him a lot. Anyone that's around will get the dogs. They have outfits. And I just think it matters how you feel. And if you put time and energy into yourself, you go about your day better. Like even if you're working from home in your home office kind of thing, you feel $1 million if you've actually put time and effort into yourself and how you feel, because you look at yourself, you feel good. And that radiates in everything that you do. And it's just, if you put time into yourself and how anything that can make you feel good, raise your frequency, and then you're inspiring for others around you. So yeah, I love doing that.
And is that part of your survival plan?
Well, in my apocalypse box, is this where you're going? Mine is the most interesting.
No, you have to slow it down. You just said a word that most people don't understand.
What?
Say what box you're talking about?
My apocalypse box.
Kim, what is an apocalypse box?
So when, all this crazy started to happen, I thought in case supply chains got interrupted and things, it'd be nice to have a supply of,
Essential
things, which David got those. So freeze-dried food and all the things that you could need to survive. I put in the incidentals into the box. So I put in makeup, hair dye, just pretty things into there. And people would go, they'd look in and go, and they'd look at me and I'd go, well, I'm not being ugly in the apocalypse. It's going to be depressing enough as it is. And I said, and watch, I'll have the most valuable apocalypse box for bartering, because people will not have that in theirs, and they'll go, well, I want some eyeliner and lipstick, and I'll go,
give us
a sheep, and you can have that. So yeah, that's what's in our basement. It's an interesting box.
Let's just say that Doomsday Preppers has never seen a fallout shelter equipped like the one that Kim has. It is.
There will still be glee.
There will be.
When there's darkness.
Yeah, when the world goes dark.
Come over to our house.
Come to Kim, and she's got you covered. Huh? Music? Oh, music, everything. You got it. It'll all be there.
Vital.
We have to break this inner story, because the inner story ends with you barely made it. That's not what we were designed for. We were not designed to barely make it. And I love this because we can laugh about it. Every time I go into the basement, we have a storage room that is the sensible storage room that actually has, food for the next couple years. And then we have a whole section of the room that I kind of just look at and I go, and that. But the reason why I wanted to share that with you is because it's so important to understand what the underlying story is about, what that says about humanity. Because it is really rational and logical to make sure that you do have a way, whether it's freeze-dried food or anything else, to have some coverage for things that are contingencies that could happen. Absolutely. But I can guarantee you that that's not a story enough. We must not think about the minimum case of what makes us barely make it through the whatever version of the negative story we want to imagine for ourselves. We have to actually take a step back and say, hold on a minute. Would I want to be alive in the environment that I'm preparing for?
Only at our house you would.
Okay. And the answer for most of us, if we actually answered it truthfully, is nah, we wouldn't. We wouldn't want to be in our own fantasy of our own future where we survived. We wouldn't. So guess what? Don't live that way. Don't live that way. If that means get an extra Bluetooth battery-powered speaker so that you can actually play some music, great, do that. If it means, like Kim, go out and raid every cosmetic shop in North America and have all of the storage supplies in our basement, do that. Well, you can't do that. She already has them all, but you know what I'm saying.
We can do a deal.
You can cut a deal at lunch. But the answer is, listen, people, think about the picture of the Book of Eli, worst apocalypse, end times, you know, the Dune or the whatever, everybody who's come up with their story of what the end times could look like. Think about that and then ask yourself, how would I add my sparkle to that world? And then add it. And don't wait for the apocalypse to do it. Start adding it now. Start stretching the muscle now. Because it turns out if you stretch that muscle now, you know what you won't have to figure out? How to do it. Now, we have gone, well, I shouldn't say we. I mean, it is we, but I've gone entirely too long.
No, you haven't. Perfect.
But
Silly head.
we have a total of 12 different bubbles to get through, and we got
That's all
20
right.
minutes
If
to get
anyone
there.
can do it, we can.
So here's what we're going to do. We're going to go fast because this afternoon we're going to have conversations about this, and we'll put the slide back up, and then we can have conversations about it. But let's go fast through how did we get to then today. Okay? From Dominion, you'll see what happened next. We actually started using the word commodity. What's commodity? It's actually the denigration of the created order. Let me say that one more time. Commodity is the denigration of the created order. We are the ones who are judge, jury, and executioner on what's important and what isn't important. And, as Adam Smith put in 1776, the created order has, and I quote, no value until human effort is applied. Would you agree with that? That's the world that we live in right now. That is the world we live in right now. It has no value until humans apply effort. Come on, Adam. You sound like the Apostle Paul. You miserable sod. Come on. You're not most miserable. If you actually see the world through the lens of being most miserable, it's because you are most miserable, not because the conditions are. So stop it. Get a coffee, take a nap, and watch a sunrise. And get your head back in the game. These are important things. We can't denigrate the created order. We can't sit there and say, well, this is more important than that, and I'm most important of all. That can't happen. But commodity is the tool we use to justify our existence, and we then create around that commodity scarcity. And we call it something beautiful. We call it civilization. Isn't it funny that we live in a world where the United Nations, that great establishment that I talked about before, and the World Bank and the IFC and the IMF, isn't it amazing that they came up with the term, and I love this term, if you want the indictment of the last 100 years, this is the term that the official establishment created in the 1940s and the 1950s that were derived from Adam Smith's 1776, The Wealth of Nations. Are you ready for this? The resources curse. Isn't that a paradoxical term? By the way, you can go look this up. Countries that have, a lot of oil, or a lot of gold, or a lot of copper, have, and I quote, the resources curse. Well, you know why? Because it turns out that when a bunch of industrialists come in a ship from the United Kingdom, or come in planes from the United Nations in New York, and they land in a place and they decide to commit genocide so that they can access cobalt, it's a curse. But was it a curse that the resources were in the Congo? Or was the curse our behavior around the people who actually had the resource. I find it absolutely stunningly hilarious that in one of my businesses, which is actually starting to extract hydrocarbons from desert tar sands, I think it's absolutely hilarious that the land that we are going to actually turn into a production that exceeds the sum of all of the current reserves left in the Middle East was a cursed land given to the Indians so that they would die in Utah. Wow. How funny would it be, just as a little thought exercise, if the place we sent the Indians to die turned into the wealthiest piece of property in all of America? And how funny would it be to watch the extreme, die-hard, blue blood-leading left actually protest the harvesting of, I don't know, something that would enrich the people who allegedly are an oppressed group that need economic development. Won't it be funny to watch President Biden tell First Nations in the Uinta Basin in Utah that they can't be enriched so that they can stay enslaved to government programs? Won't that be funny? Won't it be just a giant laugh a minute where the land that we gave people that was cursed, the desert blossoms as a rose? How about that?
Yeah.
Won't that be a bummer? And you sit back and you ask yourself a simple question. What made that happen? Well, what made that happen was understanding the second day of creation differently. Because the way we're able to do this, the way our company is able to do this, is we actually deciphered the mathematics of the second day of creation. Wow. And it turns out that you can put a machine in the desert and produce hydrocarbons that not only are clean, but if and when you combust them, they don't pollute the environment. Woohoo. So guess what? The carbon haters are going to be bummed because you're going to be able to put clean fuel in your gas-powered vehicle and you won't be driving your Tesla with an explosive battery across the country because you will not need your explosive battery Tesla that actually has a green profile that, I don't know, looks pretty freaking black to me, because you won't need it because it's not necessary. Because we have to just think differently. Wouldn't that be a bummer? But that's because we're not treating it as a commodity. We're respecting the energy that is in the system. And as a respectful, honoring engagement, what we're doing is we're not seeing it as a commodity. We're seeing it as a resource around which we have stewardship, for which we can have engagement. And it turns out that that leads to transformative opportunities that may be a mild inconvenience to the nut jobs that think you can't burn fossil fuels. Because we're not burning fossil fuels. We're oxidizing hydrocarbons. And we're doing it in a car with fuel. What else does this do? Civilization leads to indoctrination. Indoctrination is the way that we reify stories to make sure nobody questions the authority. We make sure that we don't question the established order. That's what civilization is. We in 1776 called people who didn't look like us heathens. Now, we didn't pay any attention to the fact that many of them, are you ready for this? Survived the flood at least once and maybe twice. In Kunsat Mountain in Papua New Guinea, there is a mountaintop that has 4 giant holes in the top of a flattened mountain. Giant, and when I say giant, meter and a half wide, unknown depth. Into those holes, according to their story, were pillars. And those pillars served as the foundation for a tower that, and I'm quoting from their oral tradition, was built up to heaven. And, according to their story, when people tried to climb the tower to heaven, the gods were upset, and they divided the continents. Our story of Babel is confused language. Their story is the tower, Kunsat Mountain Tower, was how Pangea broke up. Now, I don't care which story you want to tell, but I will listen to the ones that are remembered. Remembered, not stories. Because in Papua New Guinea, when you go to a fire ceremony, they actually remember the names of the ancestors back 40,000 years. I don't know how good y'all are with your memory, but I'm going out on a limb here and saying you might remember your great-great-grandparent, maybe, in an old black and white photo that was in a family Bible or whatever else. But after that, things get pretty fuzzy really fast. I don't know what it means to remember 40,000 years, because that's not part of my experience of going, yep, I remember 27 generations ago, John, who was a real jerk. I don't remember that guy. Why? Because that's not part of my process, but it is part of their process, and we call them uncivilized? Because what? Because they don't have. Because they need. See how this works? Right? They're heathen because they need what? They need what we have. No, they don't. They've gone for 40,000 years. They've survived at least 2 giant cataclysmic floods. They survived the asteroid that created the Gulf of Mexico. They did all of that, and they're still doing it today. So guess what they don't need? Our broken perspective. That's what they don't need. Because they have what they actually thrive with, which is a created order with which they dance every single day of the universe. And they can inform us. They're the civilized. We're not. Kim and I watch these shows, Ancient Civilizations, or Ancient This, or Ancient That, or Ancient anything else. And I love where everybody has the refrain, how did they do it with primitive tools? Hey, I got a wild idea. What if they didn't have primitive tools? What if those giant stones in Sacsayhuaman, which are some of the greatest megalithic stones that exist anywhere on the planet, which exist in the high Andean mountains outside of Cusco, what if those stones were liquefied and gelled and poured into place? That's not a what if. The technology that we're currently deploying on the hydrocarbon technology actually has the ability to do that with stone. We can actually make stone gelatinous. How did they do it, Dave? Well, not with forklifts, not with cranes, and not with saws. And if we think that the only measure of an advanced civilization is forklifts and cranes and saws, we're the uncivilized heathens. They weren't. But we're trying to force that picture through our Cuisinart of stupidity and then wonder why we can't explain how they did it. And Kim's favorite of all is probably who did it?
Oh, the ancient astronaut
alien.
theorists theorize.
The ancient astronaut theorists theorize that the aliens did it.
Yep.
Because clearly
Best
that
sentence
makes
of
more
confusion.
sense. That makes more sense than the possibility that humans have forgotten a thing or two. Psh. We come down the other side, we create a world that is based entirely on transactions. Relationships are transactions. Interactions with other people are transactions. We create a world where we don't exchange value. We actually punctuate interactions with one another by going, was this fair in this moment? You good, we go our separate ways. We transact the world rather than acknowledging the value that was exchanged and created. Well, that's kind of a big problem. Because if we live in a world of transactions, then we have stupid things like relationships that break because you weren't enough for me. I wasn't enough for you. You weren't. Where was enough coming in? What if I was and you were and we are? Well, no, that's not a transaction because somebody has to be in charge. Somebody has to be on top of the other one. Somebody has to control. But we don't. And in a world of transactions, then what happens is we actually make everything scarce. Because that's the only way you can control value. You can only control value by having special friends, special moments, special this, special that. Really? I was walking down Bond Street in London a couple weeks ago. These three guys actually came running across the street. 2 guys were yelling. 3 guys came running across the street. Dr. Wharton! Yes, that's me. And they came across the street. They came up and gave me this giant hug and said, thank you, because of your work, our entire football club never got the jab. Okay? Random. Just this random moment. Now, let's pause and examine that moment for just a moment. In that moment, did I do a video for them? No. There was no transaction. There was nothing in that moment when I did whatever video they watched. There was nothing in that moment that I even was aware that they existed. Where were they? In the UK, in London. And so I didn't know I didn't even know they existed. So I couldn't put them on the available market of people I wanted to influence because I didn't even know they were in the available market of people I wanted to influence because I wasn't trying to influence anybody. I was just trying to get information out. But they were there. They were there. They watched a video. They went back to their football club. None of them got the shot. Yeah. They were all survived because they didn't. That's awesome. And when they came running across Bond Street in front of cabs and crazy people and shoppers and everything else, what did they do? They put themselves out to reward me with kindness and with recognition and with appreciation. And they filled my life with gratitude for a thing I didn't even know happened. Was that a transaction? No, it's not a transaction. It's the way we could treat each other, where we didn't even know who the counterparty was. You could receive goodness without knowing that you even received it. And guess what? That's great, because that's the way the world works. The sun shines on the just and the unjust. You know why? Because the sun don't care. The sun just shines. That's what it does. And it's not sitting there going, well, you didn't appreciate me today, so I'm going to make sure when you walk outside it feels 2 degrees colder. It doesn't do that. Because it's the sun. And as a created part of the system, it just does what it does. What if each one of us examined at lunchtime, what is it that we're doing? Are we like the sun, shining on the just and unjust? Are we capable of being our essence self? And this is, by the way, a quote-worthy quote. Are we capable of being our essence self regardless of its validation? Regardless of its validation. That is absolutely the question that if we examine that question, we'll have a different lived experience. And unfortunately, what happens if we look at this last little thing, and I'm going to let Kim end on this one, because it's the topic that was probably on her note page about like at least half of the note page. and this is really important, which is why I'm going to let her end on it. Is the way in which we ultimately build our identity in the broken present system is comparison. We live in a world where the only thing we have in our interactions is comparison. And I'm going to set it up by simply going back to the very first story of the very first part of this conversation. When I said that in the beginning there was not separation, there was distinction. Distinction is a set of features that make a giraffe, and an anteater, and an eagle, an eagle. That's not separation, that's features that create a plurality of experiences. But that doesn't make the giraffe better than the anteater, better than the eagle. It merely says that for the ecosystem to exist, there are going to be distinct elements inside that ecosystem. That's all it means. Nobody's better, nobody's worse. It just is. And never once in the history of humanity or in the history of the world has a giraffe longed for the day that it could just get that nose job to look like an anteater. It's never happened. But Kim, talk about the difference between comparison and inspiration as the inspiration to lead us to lunch.
Alrighty, if I have to. Yeah.
And a story would be a great way to kick it off.
Yeah. Comparison versus inspiration. So comparison is an energy that's toxic. So it's like if you went into a room or if someone walked into a room, kind of similar to what I said before, the comparison is where you look at them and you decide there's something about them or them in general is they're better, you're worse. What is it about them that you've decided that you know that they've got more of, you have less of, or whatever that kind of thing is. Like, you know, for example, I get a lot of negativity because I am fit looking, as an example. And so people who, you know, for whatever reason, you know, I get daggers and things like that, or if my vivaciousness is too much for them and things like that. And instead of them stopping and going, well, if I'm triggered by her, and instead of sending me the energy of I want to tear her down, you could actually go, okay.
Why don't you share the story? Because the story is really good.
Which?
Hunter Valley.
Oh, yeah, the Hunter Valley one. Yes. So.
Because it was your really first attempt to speak.
Yeah. So it would be about maybe 6 or 7 years ago. We were trying to demonstrate one of David's tools that he teaches all over the world called integral accounting, and I was doing my version of it with trying to share my story and my experience of things, and it was a mind bender for most people because of what I was trying to express was, or trying to use the tool for, was what would be a good thing for me to start speaking about. And it came out to be body, like body image, body type things, especially for women. And it was like, I know you're more authentic when you can tell stories or share something or teach something if you've lived it. So I got up on stage in front of this group, and there was one woman in particular who just despised the fact I existed. She never even had a conversation with me. You could just tell there was always a glare at me every time I got introduced or was near her. It was like, ugh, like I wanted to stab you, this, whatever. And I was like, okay, whatever. So I got up there and started talking about why I wanted to talk about body image, why it was important for women through lived experience. And in a nutshell, it was because I had a horrific childhood through a mother who always told me I wasn't enough because of the way I looked. And I used to get vilified and bullied to the end of time because I was too skinny. And I was fit as anything, did all sports. There's no way I was putting on weight. And if you saw my family and stuff, we're not that way. That's how we are. And I would have given anything to not be skinny, but I was. And then the level of venom that would, you're so skinny. It was like, I actually, I felt like I was disabled or something. It was terrible. My daughter, unfortunately, went through the same thing. And people think, oh my God, wouldn't that be a cool thing? No, it's whatever venom and energy you put on. You could go, you've got glasses. And you go, I've got glasses. My God, that's terrible. Like if they've said so, it's anything to tear you down. We all, kids do it. It's just a thing. It's shocking. It is what it is. And then, but my worst thing was, then of course I, became beautiful and put on some weight and fitted into the look kind of thing. So people assumed I'd grown up like that and had this charmed life and was a cheerleader type person and, always knew I was beautiful. There will never be a time when that I will never get a thrill out of him saying I'm beautiful, because for a long time I wasn't. And so David on the stage said to me when I was just trying to talk about all of this story and things like that, and trying to open people's eyes of why it's important, just to pick to big body, especially for women, because there's always the comparisons that we're not enough, and you don't look this way, and whatever the thing is that you've decided you're less than because you're not fitting some ideal, which is such rubbish. Everyone's beautiful and amazing, and it's all designed. If there's a ping, own it. So it could be that person that looked at me and said, well, if she's skinny, it was like, okay, could that be an opportunity to look at yourself and go, I'm not taking care of myself? And go, hang on, there's a feminineness about her. Okay, have I sat down and been so harsh lately that I've lost my spark that's feminine and my vibrancy? So instead of tearing her down, it's like, okay, how can I bring myself back up to a standard of what my being is trying to tell me to be? And David said, Kim, I'm going to ask you a question. This is then in this same environment. Have you always thought you were beautiful? And it was kind of like, I was stumped. And the woman, the one that I was telling you about, goes, of course she thinks she's beautiful. And like in this venom voice. And I kind of shared the same story, and I said, no, I actually haven't. My mum, if authority figure tells you enough that you're not, you believe it. So I said, I haven't. And shared that story. And then I also talked about, it was very difficult at that time because only a month earlier I had blanked out a lot of traumatic sexual abuse that had happened as a kid. And I was still dealing with it because I'd forgotten kind of thing, you blank it out, it's how the mind works. David helped me through a lot of, conversations and things to remember so it could heal. So I spoke about that as well, and it was my first time speaking about it, and I didn't know how it would go. I didn't even know if I was ready. I didn't think I was. But with David's support and love on the stage, I was able to share that story. And through sharing that story too, women were able to go, okay, Kim didn't just get sucked into the floor and disappear, and she's still alive and kicking and stuff like that. So if she shared the story, and she's okay, but she's also not walking around with an attitude around I hate man or things like that. Like it was, she still seemed to be her vibrant self, so there's hope for me. So that was very interesting because then you saw these women then put their hand up and go, that happened to me. And their husbands would go, you never told me that. Like it was the first time they got to then...
And over half the women in the room.
Over half the women in the room had never expressed or shared it or felt safe that someone else was doing it, and they shared it. And things like that. So I suppose the bigger picture of the comparison thing is kind of look at, if you do get triggered or you feel that you're less than, kind of do the exercise I said before, but kind of also look at the inspiration piece, which is its opposite, which is the more beautiful energy that it could be rather than comparison. It's like inspiration is someone walks through the door, the same person, and go, oh, I feel myself triggered, but go, what is it about that person? And be inspired. Be inspired, A, to look at yourself and go, okay, where is my magnificence and what do I need to do to rise? Because they're setting a bar, clearly. Instead of tearing them down, see them as a beacon and a light to kind of go, okay, well, I love that jewelry that she's wearing. Or, it could be David. Oh, he's up on the stage doing things. I have things to share as a man too, and I want to do my thing. Be inspired by them. Have the thing inside you light up, which then gives them more fuel because they're coming in inspiring you. If they have to keep being battled, tearing down all the time, it's very hard energy to wear, trust me. And for you, we all have experienced it. See an inspiration and go, because, a lot of friends or people would be around me as an example, and I would be at a dinner party or whatever and sharing stories, and they'd go, I don't know what it is, but I feel like I want to invent something from being around you. I'm going to go off and do something. Like they don't know what it is, but, look for the spark in you that's igniting rather than shooting the messenger and tearing them down. Because if we don't all start igniting the spark and inspiring others, it's like living by example. If you see something in someone, that's how we're going to create a different humanity and raise a frequency, is if we all shine and help the other people shine. And that woman that's walked through the door doesn't have what you have, and you don't have what she has. You don't need it. That's them. Let them be them, and you be you, and help each other. Give her feedback. Walk up, instead of her expecting you to attack her, say, wow, what a great dress, or, or even share your story. Like, what you just thought about that person, and I can tell you what, they would relate to it. We had a really good friend. We walk in to do, it was mainly a David workshop thing, and I was there supporting really early on in our dating days. I walked in the room, and this woman that was sitting there, who's now one of my best friends, had the vulnerability and humbleness to actually walk over to me about an hour later and go, can I share something with you? And I said, yeah. And she goes, you walked into the room and I triggered to hate you. And she said, and I'm owning it, it was terrible. Someone who would never expect to do that, this most beautiful, flighty, angelic woman, who you never even thought would have that kind of thought. But I love that she was truthful enough and trusted that it would be okay. And she said, but then you spoke, and then you were you, and you were so friendly, and you were so, nice to everybody. You didn't fit that mold of what we're used to is, and we're all got to own this. We've all done it in some point, of the woman that wants to be competitive, or, just that backstabbing, betraying energy that a lot of women have against each other. We can be our own worst enemies. She said, I immediately thought you were going to be like that because of your look. Because in her mind, if a woman looks like that, means they're going to do something that's, not trustworthy or, awful or whatever. And she said, but then you were you, and she couldn't help but, oh my God, I want to be near her. I want to be great friends with her. But I love that she gave me that feedback, because if we don't share those kinds of things or look at ourselves, as women, we complain that we're all hard done by men. Now, we're actually can be the most insidious is a woman attacking another woman, because it's usually hidden and sly and much more insidious than what a man does. A man wants to say something, or if they're brutish or something like that, it's said and done. We know what we're dealing with. The hidden stuff behind a woman's back and talking about them in those whispers, that's vicious, nasty, has no place anymore. So be inspired, don't compare.
There you go. That's exactly right. All right, so here we go. We're going to take a lunch break, and we're going to reconvene. What did we say we're doing? We're coming back in 90 minutes? Hour? 90 minutes? 90 minutes. And listen, when you come back, the whole point of today was to actually break open the fundamental thing, which is we've got a lot of things we could pretend are the problem, but we need to actually focus on where a problem really lives, which is the unconsidered, unconscious way we approach the world. And the minute we actually move into a space where we consciously approach the world, then new opportunities emerge. New questions, clarifications, hey, but what about? All those kinds of things. The value of being here in the room today is if you leave with a question unasked, that's on you. So when you come back in, what we want to do is we want to enter into a dialogue where we literally talk about, hey, what would that different thing look like? How would we do things differently? All right? So we went a little over, but that's okay. You know what? I told Kim this was going to fly. It is currently 12:14. We're going to go ahead and try to start as close to 1:30 as we can. If you straggle in, that's fine. But we want to maximize the time. So let's make sure that if you can, just kind of kick it a little higher gear. But I am going to ask you to do something. Before you put a single piece of nourishment in your mouth, just try this. See if you can pick one thing. I don't care if it's a ketchup pack. See if you can do the process I did with that rice on the tomato. I don't care if it's a hamburger at In-N-Out Burger, which happens, yes, to be one of the greatest pieces of culinary delights in Yuba City. Wherever you need to go, talk about the cow, talk about the bun, but definitely talk about the milkshake, and make sure it's a chocolate milkshake. Do something where you've actually done the consciousness. Dig into that. See if you can pick your brain a little bit, and see if you can put into practice something that's really simple. But find out how hard it is. And meet us back here at 1:30. Thank you very much. How'd you go?
Really good.